Leviticus 13, the mark of the outcast, quarantine of the corrupted node. Part 1, the bioelectric rootkit in your flesh. Peace and blessings, family. If you are tuning in today, it is because you are sick and tired of the watered down, sugar-coated, punk-ass lies they feed you in those Sunday morning whorehouses. You are tuning in to Yah First Ministries, and I am your brother Betsadeh Lamed Aleph Lamed. I am not here to tickle your itching ears or pass a collection plate to buy myself a private jet while your children go hungry. I am here to hand you the raw, uncut, smoking hot truth straight from the throne room of the Most High. Today, we are embarking on a massive 5-part journey through one of the most misunderstood, skipped over, and outright butchered chapters in the entire Torah, Leviticus chapter 13. Now, your average lying-ass pastor will look at this chapter and tell you it is just some ancient, obsolete health code about a bunch of dirty, skin-diseased Israelites riding in the desert. They will tell you it has nothing to do with you today because Jesus nailed the law to the cross. That is a damn lie from the pits of hell. What we are looking at in Leviticus chapter 13 is not some primitive medical guide. This is a highly advanced technical manual detailing the bioelectric security protocols of the human machine. The Most High engineered the human body as his ultimate biological masterpiece. And in this chapter, he has given us the diagnostic codes to detect when the system has been compromised by a fun, corrupting agent. Over this 5-part series, we are going to strip away the religious garbage and look at this through the lens of divine engineering, Paleo-Hebrew forensics, and prophetic reality. We are going to see how the physical rot of the skin mirrors the spiritual rot of our people today, and how the enemy has reverse engineered these very protocols to keep us locked in a state of perpetual quarantine. So get your notebooks, get your minds right, and get ready, because we are going to dive deep into the first 12 verses of this blueprint. Let us start this investigation at the very beginning, looking at the source code of the command. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 1. And Yod Hey Waw Hey spake unto Mem Shin Hey and Aleph Hey Resh Nun, saying, look at how this opens. The Almighty does not just speak to Mem Shin He. He speaks to both Mem Shin He and Aleph He Resh Nun. Why? Because this is a dual-layered protocol. Mem Shin He represents the governmental law, the structural programming of the nation, while Aleph He Resh Nun represents the priestly execution, the hands-on maintenance of the system. In the Paleo-Hebrew, the name of our Creator, Yod Hey Waw Hey, is not some mystical, empty title. It is an active frequency. Yod is the hand or deed. He is the window or reveal. Waw is the nail or secure, and he is the reveal again. Literally, his name means the hand reveals, the nail secures and reveals. It is the ultimate signature of the master engineer. When he speaks, he is executing code. He is transmitting specifications to his primary system administrators. This aligns perfectly with what we read in the Sealed Scrolls, specifically in Sefer Yetzirah, where we learn that the Most High formed the entire universe using the 22 Paleo-Hebrew letters as his instruction set architecture. He did not just wave a magic wand like some fairy tale wizard. He compiled reality. When he speaks to Mem Shin He and Aleph He Resh Nun, he is establishing a secure network connection to transmit the diagnostic manual for the nation's biological security. He is telling them how to identify a system failure before it spreads and corrupts the entire camp. This is a matter of life and death, family. If the administrators do not know how to read the error codes, the whole mainframe goes down. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 2. When a man shall have in the skin of his flesh a rising, a scab, or bright spot, and it be in the skin of his flesh like the plague of leprosy, then he shall be brought unto Aleph He Resh Nun, the priest, or unto one of his sons, the priest. Now we are getting into the actual mechanics of the biological firewall. The skin is not just some leather wrapping to keep your guts from spilling out. It is an engineered, multi-layered security perimeter. It is the outer boundary of the human machine. In the Paleo-Hebrew, the word for flesh is Bet Shin Resh. Let us break that down letter by letter. Bet is the tent or house, the physical container. Shin is the teeth, representing consumption, destruction, or intense pressure. Resh is the head, the first or the source. So Bet Shin Resh literally means the house under pressure from the source. Your flesh is a pressurized containment vessel designed to hold the divine spark of life. When a man has a rising, a scab, or a bright spot, these are not just random blemishes. They are physical indicators that the integrity of the firewall has been breached. The Hebrew word for plague here is Nun, Gimel, Ayin. Nun is the seed or continuation. Gimel is the foot, representing walking or gathering. Ayin is the eye, representing watching or revealing. Nun Gimel Ayin literally means the continuation of the walk revealed to the eye. A plague is an ongoing progressive corruption that starts internally and eventually walks its way out to the surface where it can be seen. It is a malicious rootkit that has bypassed the internal security protocols and is now writing its corrupt code directly onto the user interface, the skin. When this happens, you do not run to some pagan doctor with a needle full of synthetic poison. You go to the priest. Why? Because the priest is the certified system analyst. He understands the relationship between the spiritual frequency and the physical manifestation. Today, our people are running to these white-coated sorcerers, swallowing their toxic pills and letting them inject heavy metals directly into their veins, while their bodies are screaming in agony because they have violated the original biological blueprint. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 3. And the priest shall look on the plague in the skin of the flesh, and when the hair in the plague is turned white, and the plague in sight be deeper than the skin of his flesh, it is a plague of leprosy, and the priest shall look on him and pronounce him unclean. Look at the diagnostic criteria the master engineer establishes here. The priest has to look for two specific indicators: the hair turning white and the plague being deeper than the skin. This is pure system diagnostics. The hair is like an antenna. It is a fiber optic filament designed to transmit and receive sensory data. When the hair turns white, it means the pigment, the biological material that carries the specific frequency of the body, has been completely drained. The connection to the power source has been severed. The hair has lost its charge. And why does it have to be deeper than the skin? Because a surface scratch is just a temporary glitch. But when the corruption is deeper than the skin, it means the root directory has been compromised. The malicious code has penetrated the subdermal layers and is eating away at the underlying architecture. In the Paleo-Hebrew, the word for leprosy is Sara'at, spelled Sade, Resh, Ayin, Ta. Sade is the trail or hook. Resh is the head or source. Ayin is the eye. Ta is the mark or covenant. Sara'at literally means the trail from the source revealed as a mark of the covenant. It is a physical, visible sign that the individual has deviated from the path of life and is now marked by corruption. When the priest sees this, he does not offer a polite prayer or tell the man to have a blessed day. He pronounces him unclean. He flags the system as corrupted. This is a hard, binary decision. There is no gray area. No, well, let us be nice and inclusive. In the kingdom of Yah, something is either clean or it is unclean. It is either 0 or 1. If you try to run corrupted code in a clean system, you will crash the entire network. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 4. If the bright spot be white in the skin of his flesh, and in sight be not deeper than the skin, and the hair thereof be not turned white, then the priest shall shut up him that hath the plague 7 days. But what if the diagnostics are inconclusive? What if there is a white spot, but it is not deeper than the skin, and the hair has not lost its charge? The master engineer does not allow for guessing. He commands a quarantine. He says to shut up him that hath the plague 7 days. This is the biological equivalent of sandboxing. When a modern cybersecurity analyst detects a suspicious file on a network but cannot immediately determine if it is a virus, they do not just let it run. They isolate it in a virtual sandbox, cut off its communication with the rest of the system, and watch how it behaves. Why 7 days? Because 7 is the number of divine completion in systemic cycles. Yah engineered time itself on a 7-day cycle. The Sabbath, Saturday sunrise to sunset, is the weekly reboot and maintenance cycle for the human machine. By isolating the individual for 7 days, the priest is allowing the body to go through one full operational cycle under observation. It is a scheduled diagnostic period to see if the internal firewall can self-correct and purge the anomaly, or if the corruption will continue to replicate. This completely destroys the garbage doctrine of free will that these lying-ass preachers love to push. The individual has no choice in this matter. They do not get to say, well, I feel fine, so I am going to go hang out with my family. No, you are shut up. You are locked down by the authority of the law. Your personal feelings do not mean a damn thing when the security of the entire nation is at stake. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 5. And the priest shall look on him the 7th day, and behold, if the plague in his sight be at a stay, and the plague spread not in the skin, then the priest shall shut him up 7 days more. Look at the patience and precision of this engineering protocol. On the 7th day, at the completion of the first cycle, the priest runs another scan. If the plague is at a stay, meaning the malicious code has not replicated, but it also has not been deleted, the priest does not just let him go. He runs a second quarantine cycle. He shuts him up for another 7 days. This is a double validation protocol. In engineering, you never rely on a single data point. You need to verify the stability of the system over multiple cycles. 14 days total. Why? Because 14 is 2 times 7, the double witness of completion. It is the exact same principle we see throughout Scripture. Everything must be established by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. Even in the physical body, Yah requires a double witness before a man can be declared clean or unclean. And let us talk about the physical reality of this isolation. Imagine being locked in a room, away from your wife, away from your children, away from the assembly, wondering if your flesh is about to start rotting off your bones. This was not some game. If you violated this quarantine, you were putting the entire community at risk of biological devastation. But today, you got these rebellious, hard-headed Negroes who cannot even stay home when they have the flu. They want to bring their coughing, hacking, mucus-dripping asses right into the gathering because they have no respect for the laws of quarantine that our Father established to protect us. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 6. And the priest shall look on him again the 7th day, and behold, if the plague be somewhat dark, and the plague spread not in the skin, the priest shall pronounce him clean. It is but a scab, and he shall wash his clothes and be clean. Now look at the recovery phase. If, after the second cycle, the plague is quote-unquote somewhat dark, meaning the bright, high-frequency white spot is losing its intensity, fading back into the natural dark skin of the Israelite, and it has not spread, then the priest can declare him clean. The system has successfully isolated and neutralized the threat. It was not a rootkit. It was just a temporary system error, a quote-unquote scab. But even then, there's a purification protocol. The man must wash his clothes. Why? Because clothes are an outer layer of environmental exposure. They collect dust, sweat, skin cells, and external pathogens. In modern terms, this is clearing the cache and deleting the temporary files. You do not just fix the internal error. You have to clean the external environment to prevent reinfection. This is where our people fail miserably today. They want to pray for healing, but they want to keep wearing the same dirty ass clothes. living in the same moldy-ass houses and eating the same toxic, rotting garbage. You cannot expect Yah to keep your temple clean when you are constantly dumping trash into it. You have to wash your clothes, clear your system, and align yourself with the physical laws of cleanliness if you want to walk in divine health. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 7. But if the scab spread much abroad in the skin, after that he has been seen of the priest for his cleansing, he shall be seen of the priest again. But what happens when the diagnostic scan fails? What if the scab, which looked like it was healing, suddenly starts replicating again? The scripture says, he shall be seen of the priest again. This is a recurring error loop. It means the corruption was not fully purged. It was just dormant, waiting for the right conditions to reactivate and spread. This is why we have to constantly monitor our spiritual and physical state. You cannot just get cleansed once and think you are good for the rest of your life. The enemy is constantly looking for a back door, a vulnerability in your firewall to inject his corrupting code. If you let your guard down, if you stop keeping the commandments, if you start mixing with the heathen and absorbing their filthy practices, that old rot will break out in your flesh again, and it will be worse than it was before. This connects directly to what we read in the book of Gad the seer and other seer testaments, where the patriarchs warn their children about the progressive nature of sin. It starts as a tiny, almost invisible spot, a single compromise, a little white lie, a small taste of the heathen's lifestyle. But if you do not address it immediately, if you do not bring it to the light of the law, it will spread throughout your entire mind and body until you are completely consumed by the rot. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 8. And if the priest see that, behold, the scab spreadeth in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a leprosy. Once the replication of the plague is confirmed, the trial period is over. The priest must pronounce him unclean. The diagnosis is final. It is a leprosy. The system is officially classified as infected. In the ancient world, being pronounced a leper was a living death sentence. Your skin would start to dry up, crack, and peel away. Your fingers and toes would rot and fall off. The stench of your own decomposing flesh would follow you everywhere you went. You were cut off from the covenant, cut off from the tabernacle, and cast out of the camp to die in isolation. This is a graphic, terrifying picture of what happens when Yah's protective hedge is removed. When the flood came in the days of Nun, Kit, Noah, the waters did not just rise politely. The fountains of the great deep burst open with the force of 1,000 volcanic eruptions, ripping the flesh off those wicked pre-Adamic rebels as they screamed and clawed at the mountains. When Sodom burned, the sulfur did not just fall like a gentle rain. It fell like burning napalm, melting the skin off those sodomite bastards while they ran blind, their eyes boiling in their sockets. That is the same level of absolute, terrifying destruction that awaits anyone who allows the rot of sin to consume them. Yah is not a gentle, passive God who tolerates corruption. He is a consuming fire, and he will purge the unclean from his presence with absolute, merciless violence. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 9. When the plague of leprosy is in a man, then he shall be brought unto the priest. Notice the passive voice here. He shall be brought. The infected individual does not always come willingly. Often, they have to be dragged to the priest by their family or their neighbors. Why? Because human nature is to hide the rot. When a man realizes he has a spot, his first instinct is to cover it up, to wear longer sleeves, to paint over it, to pretend it is not there. He does not want to face the reality of his uncleanness. He does not want to be isolated. This is exactly what our people are doing today. They are walking around with massive, gaping spiritual wounds, covered in the rotting pus of their own iniquity. But they put on a nice suit, plaster a fake-ass smile on their face, and walk into these church buildings pretending everything is fine. They do not want to be brought to the priest, which today means being brought to the hard, cutting truth of the Torah. They hate the truth because it exposes their nakedness. It rips off the band-aid and shows the raw, stinking infection underneath. But you cannot heal a wound by hiding it. You have to bring it to the light, even if you have to be dragged kicking and screaming, so that the diagnostic scan of the law can do its work. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 10. And the priest shall see him, and behold, if the rising be white in the skin, and it have turned the hair white, and there be quick raw flesh in the rising. Now we are looking at an advanced stage of the infection. The priest runs the scan and finds 3 specific markers: a white rising, white hair, and quick raw flesh in the rising. This is a highly graphic medical description of ulcerative tissue. The skin has split open and the raw, red, bleeding flesh underneath is exposed. In the Paleo-Hebrew, the word for quick or living flesh is ket yad, which means life or active energy. But in this context, it is a corrupted life. It is quick, raw flesh because the infection has eaten through the protective firewall of the skin and is now actively feeding on the living tissue underneath. It is a biological parasite, a cancer that is consuming the body's resources to replicate itself. This is the ultimate picture of the serpent seed's influence. Just as this raw flesh is a corrupt, parasitic life form living inside the host, the descendants of Kaf Yah Nun, Cain, have lived as parasites among the true house of Israel throughout history. They have infiltrated our assemblies, corrupted our scriptures, and built their entire system of global control by draining the life force, the labor, and the wealth of the chosen seed. They are the raw, ulcerated flesh in the body of our nation, and until we identify them and isolate them according to the protocols of the Most High, we will continue to rot from the inside out. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 11. It is an old leprosy in the skin of his flesh, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean, and shall not shut him up, for he is unclean. Look at this verdict. The priest does not shut him up. He does not put him in quarantine. Why? Because it is an old leprosy. The infection is already chronic. It has fully integrated into the system's architecture. There is no point in sandboxing a file that has already taken over the entire operating system. The system is compromised beyond repair. This is a terrifying spiritual reality, family. There comes a point where a man has rejected the truth for so long, has wallowed in the rot of his own mind for so many years, that the leprosy becomes, quote, old. It becomes his permanent state of being. At that point, the Most High stops calling him to repentance. He stops shutting him up for observation. He just delivers the final verdict: unclean. He gives him over to a reprobate mind, as Shin Aleph Wal Lamed wrote in Romans chapter 1. He lets him rot in his own filth until the day of destruction. This is why you cannot play games with the truth. You cannot say, well, I will keep eating this pork, and I will keep sleeping around, and I will keep ignoring the Sabbath, and I will repent when I am older. You do not know when your infection will turn into an old leprosy that can never be cured. You do not know when the master engineer will look at your system, see that the corruption has reached the core processor, and hit the delete key on your entire existence. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 12. And if a leprosy break out abroad in the skin, and the leprosy cover all the skin of him that have the plague, from his head even to his foot, whatsoever the priest looketh. Now look at this massive plot twist. This is where the divine detective has to pay close attention. The scripture says, if the leprosy breaks out abroad in the skin and covers the man from his head even to his foot, wheresoever the priest looketh. Think about this. The man is completely covered in white rot. From the crown of his head to the soles of his feet, there is not a single spot of his natural dark skin left. He looks like a walking corpse. He looks like the ultimate definition of unclean. But what is the verdict? What does the master engineer command the priest to do in this situation? We are going to stop right here, at the edge of this cliffhanger. Why would a man who is completely covered in leprosy be treated differently than a man with just a few spots? What is the hidden engineering principle behind this total systemic breakout? In part 2, we are going to crack this mystery wide open. We are going to look at verse 13, where the priest has to make a shocking decision that will turn everything you thought you knew about clean and unclean completely upside down. Keep your eyes on the blueprint, keep your fire burning, and remember, Yah first, always. Part 2, the whiteout of the systemic overwrite. We left off on a massive cliffhanger, family, staring directly at a biological paradox that makes your average theological graduate look like a complete and utter jackass. Why would a man covered head to toe in white rot be declared clean by the priest, while a man with just a few raw spots is cast out of the camp as a biohazard? Verses 13 through 17, the full systemic overwrite. To understand this, we have to look at the next step in the diagnostic protocol. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 13. Then the priest shall consider, and behold, if the leprosy have covered all his flesh, he shall pronounce him clean that hath the plague. It is all turned white, he is clean. This is where your church-minded brain short circuits. How can a man covered in rot be clean? Let us break this down using the engineering of the system. The skin is a biological display. When a man is completely white, the infection has completed its cycle. It is no longer replicating, no longer fighting the host. The system has hit a state of equilibrium. It has undergone a complete systemic overwrite. In the Paleo-Hebrew, the word for clean is tahor, spelled tet-he-wa-resh. Tet is the basket or container, representing containment or storage. He is the window, representing reveal or light. Wa is the peg or nail, representing secure connection. Resh is the head or source. Tahor literally means the container's reveal is secured by the source. When the body is completely white, the container is uniform. The conflict between the host's natural code and the invading virus has ended. The system has stabilized. Think of it like a computer that has been completely formatted. If you have a virus that is actively eating your files, your operating system is unstable. That is the raw spreading spot. But if the entire hard drive is wiped clean, there is no more active corruption running. The drive is blank. It is a clean slate. This is why the priest pronounces him clean. The active, destructive phase of the disease has burnt itself out. Throughout Scripture, Yah uses this concept of a complete whiteout to represent total transformation. In the book of Isaiah, chapter 1, verse 18, the prophet records that, though our sins be as scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. Scarlet is the color of raw, active, bleeding sin, the raw flesh. White is the state of completed transition. When our people are completely broken, when they hit rock bottom and realize they have absolutely nothing left of their own strength, that is when they are ready to be reprogrammed by the Torah. The old system has been completely wiped out so that the new operating system can be installed. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 14. But when raw flesh appeareth in him, he shall be unclean. The moment raw flesh appears, the status changes instantly from clean to unclean. Why? Because raw flesh means the system is no longer stable. The blank slate has been broken. There is an active, ulcerated conflict occurring at the subdermal level. In the Paleo-Hebrew, the words for raw or living is ket yad. Ket is the wall or fence, representing separation or private space. Yad is the hand or deed, representing active work. So ket yad literally means the fence of active work. When raw flesh appears, it means the protective wall of the skin has been breached by an active, parasitic work underneath. This is the biological equivalent of a rootkit attempting to modify system files in real time. It is a dynamic threat. It is not a static, completed overwrite. It is an active, aggressive mutation. The immune system is in a state of violent, chaotic warfare with the pathogen. The firewall has been breached, and the underlying circuitry is exposed to the elements. This is why the priest must immediately flag the system as compromised. You cannot have an active, mutating infection running wild in the assembly. It is a threat to the entire network. In our assemblies today, we have people who want to bring their active, unrepentant, mutating wickedness into the camp. They do not want to be wiped clean. They want to keep their raw, bleeding spots of rebellion, their sexual deviance, their idolatry, and their heathen philosophies, and they expect the body of Israel to just tolerate it. That is absolute bullshit. The law says the moment that raw, active rebellion appears, you are unclean, period. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 15. And the priest shall see the raw flesh and pronounce him to be unclean. For the raw flesh is unclean. It is a leprosy. The master engineer repeats this protocol to ensure there is absolutely no ambiguity. The priest must see the raw flesh and pronounce him unclean. Why? Because the raw flesh is unclean. It is a leprosy. This is a hard, binary rule. There is no negotiation, no sliding scale of tolerance. No, well, it is only a small spot of raw flesh, so let us let it slide. In the Paleo-Hebrew, the word for unclean is tameh, spelled tet, mem, aleph. Tet is the basket or container. Mem is the water, representing chaos, blood, or massive flow. Aleph is the ox head, representing strength or leader. So tameh literally means the container of chaos dominating the strength. When raw flesh is present, chaos is dominating the structural integrity of the body. The machine is failing. The biological software is glitched, and the hardware is actively decomposing. This is the exact same judgment we see executed throughout history when our people allowed the chaos of the heathen nations to dominate their strength. When we went whoring after the gods of the Spaniards, the British, the Arabs, and the Africans, we became spiritually ulcerated. Our nation became a mass of raw, bleeding, weeping wounds. In the book of Jeremiah, the prophet laments that our bruise is incurable and our wound is grievous because we have forgotten our husband and spread our legs for every passing empire. We became a nation of spiritual lepers, and the Most High cast us out of our land, out of our camp, and scattered us across the four corners of this flat earth to be ground into the dust by our enemies. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 16. Or if the raw flesh turn again and be changed unto white, he shall come unto the priest. But look at the adaptability of the biological machine. The raw flesh can turn again and be changed into white. The system can self-correct. The active, chaotic warfare can subside, and the tissue can transition into a stable, scarred state. When this happens, the individual must return to the priest for a rescan. This is the process of true repentance. Repentance is not a feeling. It is the structural change in your operating system. In the Paleo-Hebrew, the word for turn or return is shub, spelled shin, wa, bet. Shin is the teeth, representing destruction or consuming energy. Wa is the peg, representing security. Bet is the house. So shub literally means consuming the old to secure the house. You have to burn down the old, corrupted files of your past life to secure your biological temple. When you turn from the raw, active sin and allow the law to completely overwrite your lifestyle, you are changing your frequency. You are moving from the chaotic, high-friction state of rebellion to the stable, low-friction state of obedience. But you cannot do this on your own terms. You must bring your system to the priest, the law, to be validated. You do not get to declare yourself clean. The word must declare you clean. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 17. And the priest shall see him, and behold, if the plague be turned into white, then the priest shall pronounce him clean that hath the plague, he is clean. The priest performs the final validation. If the plague is indeed turned into white, the verdict is clean. The system has successfully completed its transition. The threat has been neutralized, and the host is no longer contagious. This is a beautiful picture of the ultimate redemption of Israel. We are a people who have been raw, bleeding, and broken for centuries under the curses of Deuteronomy chapter 28. We have been worked like beasts of burden by the British, the Dutch, the Portuguese, and the white man. We have been sold for trinkets by our Hamitic cousins in Africa. We have been castrated and raped by the Arabs. We are covered in the raw wounds of our captivity. But when we wake up, when the spirit of life from Yah enters into us, and we stand on our feet as the two witnesses, we are undergoing the systemic transition. We are turning white, not in skin color, but in spiritual purity and systemic stability. We are being wiped clean of the heathen's code so that we can be restored to our original design function as the rulers of this earth. Verses 18 through 24, the complications of the boil and the burn. Now the master engineer moves the diagnostic focus from general skin eruptions to localized trauma sites, the boil and the burn. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 18. The flesh also, in which, even in the skin thereof, was a boil, and is healed. Here we see the introduction of a localized system failure, a boil. A boil is an abscess, a deep-seated infection in the hair follicle or sweat gland. It is a localized pressure vessel of pus and dead white blood cells. In the Paleo-Hebrew, the word for boil is shakin, spelled shin, ket, yud, nun. Shin is the teeth, representing destruction or heat. Ket is the wall. Yud is the hand or active work. Nun is the seed or continuation. Shakin literally means the heat destroying the wall through an active, continuing work. It is a localized thermal spike. The text notes that the boil is healed. The immediate infection has been suppressed. The body's immune system, its internal antivirus software, has successfully walled off the pathogen and drained the pus. But the structure of the tissue has been permanently altered. There is a scar, a localized vulnerability where the original firewall was compromised. This is a critical lesson in risk assessment and structural engineering. Just because a crisis has passed does not mean the system is secure. A healed wound is a weak point. In your financial life, in your spiritual life, and in your physical body, the places where you have previously failed are the very places where the enemy will attempt to launch his next exploit. If you had a financial collapse because you took on stupid consumption debt, that is a healed boil. If you do not monitor that specific area of your life with extreme diligence, the rot will break out in that exact same spot again. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 19. And in the place of the boil, there be a white rising, or a bright spot, white and somewhat reddish, and it be shewed to the priest. Look at what happens in the scar tissue of the healed boil. A white rising, or a bright spot, white and somewhat reddish appears. This is a secondary infection. The original firewall breach was patched, but the patch was faulty. The tissue did not restore to its original design specifications. It formed a keloid, or a secondary lesion. The color combination here is highly symbolic, white and somewhat reddish. In the scriptures, red represents the flesh, carnality, and bloodlust. It is the color of Esau, the man of the flesh, who sold his birthright for a bowl of red soup. White, in this context of disease, represents the pale, dead, depigmented state of cellular decay. When you see white and red mixing in a wound, you are looking at the active conflict between life and death, between the spirit and the flesh. It is a high-frequency thermal signature of active inflammation. This must be shown to the priest immediately. Why? Because a secondary infection in a scarred area is far more dangerous than a primary infection. It means the body's natural defense mechanisms are failing to maintain the integrity of the patch. It is like a hacker finding a vulnerability in a software update that was supposed to fix the original bug. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 20. And if, when the priest seeth it, behold, it be in sight lower than the skin, and the hair thereof be turned white, the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is the plague of leprosy broken out of the boil. The diagnostic scan reveals the worst case scenario. The spot is lower than the skin, and the hair has turned white. The priest must pronounce him unclean. This is not a simple scar. It is a plague of leprosy broken out of the boil. This is a deep structural penetration. The phrase lower than the skin means the corruption has bypassed the subdermal layers and is now eating into the deep tissue, the muscle, and the bone. It has accessed the system's core memory. The hair turning white confirms that the local power grid has been completely drained of its charge. The biological antenna is dead. This is what happens when you do not fully repent of your past sins. You think you healed the boil. You think you stopped the act of rebellion. But because you did not completely purge the root cause, because you kept the same heathen friends, kept watching the same filthy entertainment, and kept harboring the same bitter, covenant-hating attitude, the leprosy breaks out right inside the scar of your old life. It is a deeper, more vicious corruption than the first one. It is a systemic relapse. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 21. But if the priest look on it, and behold, there be no white hairs therein, and if it be not lower than the skin, but be somewhat dark, then the priest shall shut him up 7 days. But if the diagnostic indicators are not fully developed, no white hairs, not lower than the skin, and somewhat dark, the priest applies the standard sandboxing protocol. He shuts him up for 7 days. This is the mercy of the law. Even when there is a high probability of corruption, the master engineer does not execute final judgment without verification. He gives the system a chance to self-correct. He isolates the anomaly to see if the darkest hue indicates that the tissue is repigmenting and restoring its natural, healthy frequency. In our daily lives, when we see a brother or sister starting to slip back into their old worldly habits, we do not immediately cast them out and treat them like heathen. We sandbox them. We pull them aside. We isolate them from the general assembly for a period of time, and we watch their behavior. We give them space to see if they will align themselves back with the Torah, or if the worldly rot will continue to spread in their minds. We do not guess. We let the fruits of their actions reveal the true state of their system. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 22. And if it spread much abroad in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is the plague. If the quarantine reveals that the spot is actively replicating and spreading across the skin, the verdict is absolute. Unclean. It is a plague. The sandboxing period has failed to contain the threat. The malicious code is actively executing and expanding its footprint. This is the tragedy of so many of our people. They are given opportunities to repent, given space to correct their ways, but they choose to let the rot spread. They continue to allow the worldly, fleshly desires of Esau to dominate their minds. They let the spiritual leprosy of the Christian church, the Islamic mosque, and the conscious community eat away at their identity until they are completely unrecognizable. They become walking vectors of spiritual disease, and the only righteous action the assembly can take is to cut them off and cast them out before they infect the entire camp. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 23. But if the bright spot stay in its place and spread not, it is a burning boil, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. But if the spot remains static, if it does not replicate or spread, it is diagnosed as a burning boil. It is just localized inflammation from the healing process. The priest pronounces him clean. This is a critical distinction. There's a difference between a permanent, destructive plague and a temporary, painful healing process. When you start walking in this truth, when you start purging the dead flesh from your diet and returning to the plant-based, vegan lifestyle that Yah engineered in Genesis chapter 1, verse 29, your body will go through a massive detoxification process. You will get breakouts, you will get boils, you will get headaches, and you will feel like absolute garbage. That is not leprosy. That is the burning boil of your system, purging the decades of rotting pork, shrimp, and chemical poisons you dumped into your temple. It is a localized thermal event as your body's internal incinerator burns up the trash. The priest, the law, pronounces you clean because the system is operating exactly as it was designed to do. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 24. Or if there be any flesh, in the skin whereof there is a hot burning, and the quick flesh that burneth have a white bright spot, somewhat reddish or white. Now we move from the boil to the hot burning, a physical burn caused by fire or extreme heat. This is external trauma. The skin has been subjected to an intense thermal overload, destroying the outer layers of the firewall and exposing the quick flesh underneath. In this traumatized zone, a white, bright spot, somewhat reddish or white, appears. This is the exact same color signature we saw in the boil. The burn has created a localized vulnerability, and now the system is struggling to rebuild the tissue. The presence of the white and red spot indicates that the healing process has been hijacked by a secondary, corrupting frequency. This is a powerful prophetic allegory, family. A burn is a sudden, violent trial. It is the fiery trial that Shin Aleph Wal Lamed and Kaf Aleph P Aleph Peter warned us about. Sometimes the Most High allows us to go through a fiery furnace of affliction to test our mettle, to see if our faith is built on solid rock or on the shifting sands of these religious lies. But if we are not careful, if we let bitterness, anger, and resentment creep into our minds during that fiery trial, we will develop a spiritual spot right in the middle of our burn. We will let the trauma of our past turn into a permanent, rotting plague of unbelief. We are going to pause right here at the end of verse 24. We have analyzed the mechanics of the boil and the initial stages of the burn. But what happens when the priest runs the full diagnostic scan on this thermal trauma site? In part 3, we are going to dive directly into verse 25 and see how the master engineer handles the complications of the fiery burn. We are going to see how the hair in the bright spot behaves and how the depth of the wound determines the final verdict of the system analyst. Keep your notebooks open, keep your minds locked into the frequency of the Torah, and do not let the enemy inject his corrupt code into your firewall. Part 3. The yellow hair of the Hellenistic infiltration. We close out our last segment examining the thermal overload of the hot burning, where localized trauma creates a dangerous vulnerability in the biological firewall of our skin. Now we must trace how the master engineer commands his system administrators to run deep-level diagnostics when an external breach is hijacked by a corrupting systemic frequency. Verses 25 through 28, the fiery trial and the scar of the burn. Let us look at the exact protocol for analyzing a system that has undergone thermal trauma and is now showing signs of secondary corruption. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 25. Then the priest shall look upon it, and behold, if the hair in the bright spot be turned white, and it be in sight deeper than the skin, it is a leprosy, broken out of the burning. Wherefore the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is the plague of leprosy. Look at this diagnostic scan. The master engineer is showing us that when a hot burning, an external trauma, a trial by fire, occurs, the resulting scar can become the breeding ground for a deeper, systemic rot. The hair in the bright spot turns white, and the lesion is deeper than the skin. In the Paleo Hebrew, the word for burning is mikyah, spelled mem, Kaf, Wow, He. Mem is water, representing chaos or massive flow. Kaf is the palm of the hand, representing bending, taming, or opening. Wow is the peg, representing security. He is the window, representing reveal. Mikya literally means the chaos is tamed and secured to reveal. A burn is a chaotic event that has been tamed, meaning the fire is gone, but what is secured and revealed in its place is a scar. If that scar turns white and goes deeper than the skin, it means the trauma did not just damage the surface, it penetrated the root directory. The hair, which is our fiber optic antenna designed to transmit the body's natural frequency, has lost its charge. The connection to the power source is dead. This is a leprosy broken out of the burning. This is the exact historical blueprint of what happened to our people during the Greek captivity under Antiochus Epiphanes in the 2nd century BCE. The Greek Empire was a fiery furnace of affliction. They burned our scriptures, they slaughtered our infants, and they forced our ancestors to eat swine's flesh. This historical trauma is recorded in detail in the first book of Maccabees, chapter 1. Many of our people could not stand the heat of that burning. Their spiritual firewalls collapsed, and they allowed the white, dead, pagan culture of Hellenism to overwrite their minds. They did not just suffer physical trauma, they let the leprosy of Greek philosophy and heathen lifestyles break out of their burning. They became utterly unclean, completely compromising the covenant bloodline. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 26. But if the priest look on it, and behold, there be no white hair in the bright spot, and it be no lower than the other skin, but be somewhat dark, then the priest shall shut him up 7 days. But what if the system shows resilience after the trauma? If there are no white hairs, if the lesion is not lower than the skin, and if it is somewhat dark, the priest executes the sandboxing protocol. He shuts him up for 7 days. In the Paleo-Hebrew, the word for dark is Kehe, spelled Kaf, He. Kaf is the palm of the hand. He is the window or reveal. So Kehe literally means the hand taming the reveal. The bright, high-frequency white spot of active decay is being tamed. The natural dark pigment of the Israelite skin is attempting to reassert itself, to write its original code back over the damaged area. The 7-day quarantine is a scheduled maintenance cycle. It allows the host operating system to run its repair scripts without external interference. This is what happened to the righteous remnant of Israel who fled into the wilderness during the Hellenistic persecution. As recorded in the first book of Maccabees, chapter 2, Mattathias and his sons refused to bow to the Greek idols. They isolated themselves in the mountains. They sandboxed themselves from the corrupting influence of the Greek cities. They kept the Saturday Sabbath from sunrise to sunset, even when the enemy attacked them on that day. Because they isolated themselves and maintained their frequency, they were able to purge the Hellenistic infection and launch a successful counteroffensive to cleanse the temple. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 27. And the priest shall look upon him the 7th day. And if it be spread much abroad in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is the plague of leprosy. If on the 7th day, the priest runs the scan and finds that the spot has spread much abroad, the sandboxing has failed. The verdict is binary and absolute. Unclean. It is the plague of leprosy. The malicious code has bypassed the quarantine and is actively replicating across the user interface. This is the tragedy of those Israelites who tried to play both sides during the Greek and Roman occupations. They thought they could adopt a little bit of Greek philosophy, attend a few pagan theater shows, and still keep the Torah in secret. But you cannot sandbox a mutating virus forever. If you do not completely delete the corruption, it will spread. The historical receipts are clear. In the 2nd book of Maccabees, chapter 4, we read about a wicked high priest named Jason who bought his office from the Greek king. He immediately set up a Greek gymnasium right next to the temple. He had our young men wearing Greek hats and participating in pagan sports. The infection spread so fast that even the priests despised the service of the altar and rushed to participate in the heathen games. The raw, bleeding spot of compromise spread until the entire leadership of Jerusalem was spiritually rotten. They became utterly unclean, and the Most High delivered them into the hands of Antiochus to be slaughtered like dogs in the streets, their blood running ankle deep in the gutters. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 28. And if the bright spot stay in its place, and spread not in the skin, but it be somewhat dark, it is the rising of the burning, and the priest shall pronounce him clean, for it is an inflammation of the burning. If the spot remains static and darkens, it is just a rising of the burning, an inflammation. The system has successfully localized the damage. The priest pronounces him clean. This is the scar of a survivor. In engineering, when a material undergoes high stress or thermal loading, it develops a heat-affected zone. If the material is high quality, it will not crack or fail. It will simply kimper and harden. The scar is a testament to the system's structural integrity. This is the spiritual state of our people who endured the transatlantic slave trade and survived the plantations of Jamaica, Haiti, Brazil, and America. We were thrown into the fiery furnace of the white man's captivity. We were branded with hot irons, whipped until our flesh hung off our backs in bloody ribbons, and had our babies ripped from our arms to be fed to alligators. It was a brutal, catastrophic burning. But a remnant of our people kept their minds intact. They did not let the white man's Christianity completely destroy their inner connection to the Father. They carried the scars of the burning, but their spiritual core remained dark, meaning they retained their natural, original connection to the Creator. When the priest looks at this remnant today, he pronounces them clean. The fire tried us, but it did not consume us. Verses 29 through 37. The dry scar of the head and beard. Now the master engineer shifts the diagnostic lens to the most critical sectors of the human machine, the head and the beard. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 29. If a man or woman have a plague upon the head or the beard, this is a highly critical sector breach. The head is the location of the core processor, the brain. The beard is the secondary sensory array of the male Israelite, designed to interface with the environmental frequencies. A plague in these areas is a direct threat to the system's command and control center. In the Paleo-Hebrew, the word for head is Rosh, spelled Resh, Aleph, Shin. Resh is the head, or first. Aleph is the ox head, representing strength. Shin is the teeth, representing consumption or destruction. Rosh literally means the first strength consuming. It is the primary seat of authority. The word for beard is Zakan, spelled Zion, Kaf, Nun. Zion is the weapon, or cut, representing defense or harvest. Kaf is the horizon, or sun cycle, representing time or gathering. Nun is the seed, or continuation. Zakan literally means the weapon gathering the seed. The beard is not just facial hair, it is a biological shield, a sensory array that filters environmental frequencies and protects the male's facial nerves. A plague in these areas is a highly targeted attack by the enemy. If the core processor or the primary sensory array is compromised, the entire machine will execute corrupted commands. This is why the diagnostic protocols for the head and beard are the most detailed and rigorous in the entire manual. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 30. Then the priest shall see the plague, and behold, if it be in sight deeper than the skin, and there be in it a yellow thin hair, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a dry scald, even a leprosy, upon the head or beard. Look at the specific diagnostic marker for this sector breach. A yellow thin hair. This is a massive clue. Why yellow? Why thin? In the natural state of the Israelite, our hair is thick, dark, and woolly. It is a high-capacity, copper-toned fiber optic network designed to conduct the electrical charge of the brain. But when the system is compromised by this specific plague, the hair loses its structure, loses its pigment, and turns into a yellow thin hair. It becomes like the hair of the heathen. In the Paleo-Hebrew, the word for skull is netek, spelled Nun, Ta, Kof. Nun is the seed or continuation. Ta is the mark or covenant. Kuf is the horizon or gathering. Netek literally means the continuation of the covenant mark gathered. But in this diseased state, it is a dry skull, a localized dehydration of the system's lubrication. The word for yellow is sahab, spelled Zadeh, He, Bet. Zadeh is the trail or hook. He is the window or reveal. Bet is the house. Zahab literally means the trail revealed in the house. The yellow hair is a visible trail of decay inside the biological temple. This is the ultimate biological representation of the Hellenistic and Roman infiltration of our people. The yellow thin hair is the physical archetype of the Caucasian and Grecian seed. When our ancestors allowed the Greek culture to enter their heads, they developed a spiritual dry skull. We see this played out in the historical records of the letter of Aristeas and the writings of Flavius Josephus. The Greek kings of Egypt and Syria wanted to translate our Hebrew scriptures into Greek, the Septuagint. They hired Hellenized scribes to do this. These scribes did not just translate words, they injected Greek philosophical concepts into our sacred texts. They replaced the concrete, action-based Paleo-Hebrew programming language with abstract, speculative Greek thought. They took the woolly-haired, dark-skinned Messiah and prepared the ground to eventually paint him as a pale-faced, yellow-haired Greek philosopher. This was a massive, intellectual dry skull on the head of our nation. It compromised our core processor, and our people have been walking around with yellow, thin hair in their minds ever since, worshiping a white image that has absolutely nothing to do with the true Savior, Yud, He, Wah, Shin, Ayin. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 31. And if the priest look on the plague of the skull, and behold, it be not in sight deeper than the skin, and that there is no black hair in it, then the priest shall shut up him that hath the plague of the skull 7 days. But what if the scan is inconclusive? If the skull is not deeper than the skin, but there is no black hair in it, meaning the natural, thick, woolly black hair has fallen out, but the yellow hair has not yet developed, the priest sandboxes the individual for 7 days. This is a critical state of transition. The system has lost its natural, healthy output, the black hair, but it has not yet fully compiled the corrupted code, the yellow hair. The black hair represents the original design frequency. In the Paleo-Hebrew, the word for black is shakor, spelled Shin, Ket, Wah, Resh. Shin is the teeth, representing consumption or heat. Ket is the wall. Wall is the peg. Resh is the head. Shakor literally means the heat wall securing the head. Our dark, woolly hair is a protective heat wall for our core processor. It absorbs solar radiation and converts it into biological energy. When there is no black hair, the system is unprotected. It is vulnerable to external programming. The 7-day quarantine is a critical buffer zone. The priest must isolate the individual to prevent any external frequencies from locking in the corrupted, yellow-haired state. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 32. And in the 7th day, the priest shall look on the plague, and behold, if the skull spread not, and there be in it no yellow hair, and the skull be not in sight deeper than the skin, on the 7th day, the priest runs another scan. He is looking for 3 specific parameters. The skull has not spread, there is no yellow hair, and the lesion is not deeper than the skin. This is a highly precise, multivariable diagnostic check. The master engineer is verifying if the system is in a state of stasis. The absence of yellow hair is the most critical factor. It means the corrupted, heathen code has not been compiled. The The system is still running on its basic, uncorrupted kernel, even though the outer interface is damaged. This is the state of our people who are currently sitting in these Christian churches, but are starting to feel that something is deeply wrong. They have not yet fully swallowed the Trinitarian lawless garbage, the yellow hair, but they have lost their connection to their true identity. They are in a spiritual sandbox. They are being observed by the angels, who are extensions of Yah's presence, to see which way their system will tilt. Will they return to the black hair of the Torah, or will they compile the yellow hair of the church? Leviticus chapter 13, verse 33. He shall be shaven, but the skull shall he not shave, and the priest shall shut up him that hath the skull 7 days more. Look at this highly advanced physical procedure. The man must be shaven, but the skull itself must not be shaven. Then he is sandboxed for another 7 days. Why shave the head but leave the skull? This is a brilliant engineering protocol. By shaving the healthy hair around the skull, the priest is creating a physical air gap. In modern electronics and cybersecurity, an air gap is a physical separation between a secure network and an unsecured network. By shaving the hair, the priest is cutting off the transmission pathways. He is isolating the infected sector so that the corruption cannot use the surrounding hair follicles as a bridge to spread across the rest of the head. And why another 7 days? 14 days total. This is the double witness of systemic completion. The system must be tested over 2 full operational cycles under the strict conditions of the air gap. This is what we must do with our minds when we begin to wake up to this truth. We have to shave off all the worldly attachments, all the pagan traditions, and all the theological garbage we learned in Sunday school. We have to create a spiritual air gap between ourselves and our unawakened family members, our old friends, and our former pastors. If you do not isolate the infected areas of your mind, if you keep hanging out with people who are running corrupted code, their yellow-haired doctrines will jump across the gap and reinfect your core processor. You must be shut up 7 days more. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 34. And in the 7th day, the priest shall look on the skull, and behold, if the skull be not spread in the skin, nor be in sight deeper than the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him clean, and he shall wash his clothes and be clean. If, after the second quarantine cycle, the skull has not spread and is not deeper than the skin, the priest pronounces him clean. The air gap protocol has worked. The system has stabilized, and the threat has been neutralized. But notice the purification protocol. He shall wash his clothes and be clean. Even though the head is clean, the outer garments must be washed. Why? Because during the 14 days of isolation, the garments have been exposed to the shedding skin cells and pathogens of the infected host. In modern technical terms, this is clearing the cache and deleting the temporary internet files after a system restore. You do not just fix the registry errors. You have to delete the installer files that brought the virus in the first place. This is where so many awakened Israelites fail. They learn their identity, they start calling on the true names of Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh and Yod-Heh-Waw-Shin-Ayin, but they keep their old dirty clothes. They keep their pagan holidays, they keep their Christmas trees, they keep their Easter hams, and they keep their capitalist, worldly ambitions. You cannot run a clean operating system while keeping the installer files of the virus on your hard drive. You have to wash your clothes. You have to completely clean your physical and social environment if you want to walk in the full power of the covenant. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 35. But if the skull spread much in the skin after his cleansing, but what if the system suffers a post-cleansing relapse? If, after being pronounced clean, the skull suddenly starts replicating and spreading much in the skin, the situation is highly critical. This is a recurrent exploit. It means the virus was not fully deleted. It was just dormant, hiding in the deep registry files of the system. The moment the user went back to normal operations, the malicious code executed again and bypassed the firewall. This is the exact historical pattern of the southern kingdom of Judah after the Babylonian captivity. As recorded in the book of Nehemiah and the book of Ezra, our people returned from Babylon and cleansed the temple. They put away their strange wives and swore a covenant to keep the Torah. They were pronounced clean. But within a few generations, the scars started to spread again. They began to corrupt the Sabbath. They neglected the tithes, and they allowed the heathen to set up shop right inside the gates of Jerusalem. The corruption spread so much that by the time the Messiah walked the earth in the flesh as Yod, He, Wah, Shin, Ayin, the religious leaders, the Pharisees and Sadducees, were running a completely corrupted system. They had turned the Father's house of prayer into a den of thieves, a biological containment zone of spiritual rot. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 36. Then the priest shall look on him, and behold, if the scall be spread in the skin, the priest shall not seek for yellow hair. He is unclean. Look at this final, devastating diagnostic shortcut. If the scall is actively spreading, the priest shall not seek for yellow hair. He is unclean. The presence of yellow hair is no longer required to confirm the diagnosis. The rapid, uncontrolled replication of the lesion is sufficient proof of systemic failure. This is a hard, binary execution. The trial period is over. The system is flagged as permanently compromised. The priest does not waste time running detailed analyses on the hair follicles. The spreading lesion itself is the death certificate of the system's integrity. This is the state of the global, white-dominated world system today, the modern archetype of Babylon. It is a system that has allowed the scald of lawlessness, greed, and biological destruction to spread across the entire flat earth. They have poisoned the waters. They have sprayed heavy metals in the air, and they have filled our food with chemical abominations. They have legalized every form of sexual deviance, and they force our children to bow to their rainbow idols. The scald has spread to every corner of the earth. The Most High is no longer looking for specific excuses or running detailed diagnostics on this wicked generation. He has already pronounced the system unclean. This aligns perfectly with the prophetic warnings in the second book of Ezra, chapter 15, where the prophet describes the terrible plagues, the blood, and the destruction that will sweep across the earth in the latter days. The nations have filled the cup of their iniquity to the brim. They have worked our people to death. They have stolen our identity, and they have laughed at our destruction. But their day of reckoning is here. The master engineer is about to hit the delete key on their entire civilization. He is going to rain down fire and sulfur, just like he did on Sodom, and the blood of the wicked will run as deep as a horse's bridle for miles. We are going to stop right here, at the end of verse 36. We have broken down the precise protocols for the head and the beard, and we have seen how the yellow hair represents the corrupting frequency of the heathen infiltration. But what happens when the natural hair falls off completely? What is the diagnostic protocol for baldness, and how does the priest differentiate between a clean scalp and a leprous forehead? In part 4, we are going to dive directly into verse 37 and crack open the mystery of the bald head. We are going to look at how the enemy has used these very protocols to keep our people in a state of perpetual spiritual baldness, and how we can restore our biological antennas to receive the pure signal of the Torah. Keep your fire burning, keep your eyes on the blueprint, and remember, Yah first, always. Part 4, the bald head and the naked motherboard. We left off right at the edge of the bald head, staring at how the master engineer diagnoses a system that has lost its primary fiber optic sensory array. Now we must trace how the priest executes deep-level subdermal diagnostics on a naked motherboard to determine if the biological mainframe is clean or utterly corrupted. Verses 37 through 42, the bare copper and the forehead breach. Let us dive straight into the diagnostic protocols for the bald head and the forehead to see how the master engineer reads the naked circuitry of the human machine. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 37. But if the skull be in his sight at a stay, and that there is black hair grown up therein, the skull is healed, he is clean, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. The system has successfully executed its self-repair scripts. The dry skull is at a stay, and the natural, thick, woolly black hair has sprouted back up through the damaged sector. In the Paleo-Hebrew, the word for healed is Rapha, spelled Resh, P, Aleph. Resh is the head or first. P is the mouth or blow, representing speech or breath. Aleph is the ox head, representing strength or power. Rapha literally means the head's breath, restoring the strength. When the black hair returns, the biological antenna is restored to its original design frequency. The system is clean. This is the biological equivalent of a network card recovering its signal after a severe driver conflict. The black hair, acting as a copper tone antenna, is once again conducting the electrical charge of the brain. The priest, the system analyst, pronounces him clean because the hardware has returned to its original manufacturing specifications. This is the exact spiritual state of our people who have been sandboxed, have heard the cutting truth of the Torah, and have allowed the spirit of life from Yah to regenerate their minds. They have stopped running the corrupted Greek and Roman code. They have stopped eating the rotting, putrefying dead flesh of animals that clogs their biological temples and feeds parasites. They have returned to the original plant-based, vegan blueprint of Genesis chapter 1, verse 29, which Yah engineered as our primary fuel source. Because they aligned their physical vessels with the Creator's design, their spiritual antennas have grown back. They are no longer dead, dry, hollow shells. They are active, clean, high-frequency receivers ready to execute the kingdom's commands. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 38. If a man also, or a woman, have in the skin of their flesh bright spots, even white bright spots. Now we look at a different kind of system anomaly. White bright spots appearing generally in the skin. This is not a localized sector breach like a boil or a burn. This is a widespread, low-level signal fluctuation across the outer display. In the Paleo-Hebrew, the word for bright spot is beheret, spelled Bet, He, Resh, Ta. Bet is the house or container. He is the window or reveal. Resh is the head or source. Ta is the mark or covenant. Beheret literally means the house reveals the mark of the source. When these white spots appear, the outer display of the flesh is revealing a change in the internal system voltage. The skin is acting as a biological monitor, showing that an internal process is writing data to the surface. This is the biological equivalent of a low voltage warning light flashing on your dashboard. It is not a catastrophic system crash, but it is an anomaly that must be investigated by the system administrator. Our people today are walking around with all kinds of physical and spiritual bright spots, compromises, doubts, and worldly habits, and they do not realize that these are indicators of an internal conflict. They think they can harbor secret sins, watch filthy, degenerate entertainment, and sleep around with the heathen, and it won't show on their display. But Yah engineered the human machine so that whatever is running in your root directory will eventually write its code directly onto your face for everyone to see. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 39. Then the priest shall look, and behold, if the bright spots in the skin of their flesh be darkish white, it is a freckled spot that groweth in the skin. He is clean. The priest runs the scan and finds that the bright spots are darkish white. This is a critical distinction. The spot is not a high-intensity, high-frequency white of active decay. It is a low-intensity, dull white. The master engineer diagnoses this as a freckled spot that groweth in the skin. The verdict is clean. In the Paleo-Hebrew, The word for freckle spot is boak, spelled bet, he, kaf. Bet is the house, he is the window, kaf is the horizon or gathering. Boak literally means the house revealing a gathering. It is a harmless accumulation of pigment, a benign system variation. The system is stable. The operating system is not being overridden by a malicious rootkit. It is simply displaying a harmless hardware variation. This is a powerful lesson in discernment, family. We have to know the difference between a brother who is actively running corrupted malicious code and a brother who simply has a few harmless system variations, a few freckle spots. Some of these extreme costume-wearing camps want to cast a brother out of the assembly because he doesn't wear their stupid, made-up fringes or because he shaved his face. They are playing dress-up, cosplaying a Levitical priesthood that Yah dissolved when he walked the earth as Yad-He Washin Ayin. They do not have the discernment of the priest. They do not know how to look for the darkish white spots of harmless human weakness. They want to condemn everyone who doesn't look exactly like them, while they themselves are rotting from the inside out with pride, bitterness, and covenant-hating rebellion. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 40. And the man whose hair is fallen off his head, he is bald, yet is he clean. Now we hit the naked motherboard. The man whose hair is fallen off his head, he is bald, yet is he clean. This is a massive revelation. The loss of the hair, the physical antenna array, does not automatically mean the system is corrupted. It simply means the display is now bare. In the Paleo-Hebrew, the word for bald is kerek, spelled kof, resh, ket. Kof is the horizon or gathering. Resh is the head. Ket is the wall or fence. Kerek literally means the head's wall is gathered. The protective hair wall has been removed, exposing the bare scalp. But because there is no active, spreading rot, no raw flesh, and no yellow hair, the system is clean. This is the biological equivalent of a motherboard with its external casing removed. The copper traces and silicon chips are completely exposed to the elements, but the operating system is still running, pure, uncorrupted code. The lack of an antenna does not mean the processor is broken. It just means the signal must be transmitted through other pathways. This connects directly to what we read in the book of Jasher and other sealed records about the ancient prophets. Many of them were bald, yet they carried the highest frequency of the Holy Spirit. Think of the prophet Elisha. In the second book of Kings, chapter 2, we read that a bunch of wicked, pre-Adamic youths came out of Bethel and mocked him, crying, "Go up, thou bald head! Go up, thou bald head!" They were mocking his bare motherboard. They thought because he didn't have the physical hair antenna, he had no power. But Elisha turned around and cursed them in the name of Yad-He, and 2 she-bears came out of the wood and tore 42 of those little bastards to pieces, ripping their flesh off their bones and leaving their intestines spilling into the dirt. Yah is not mocked. The bare motherboard still carries the lightning of the Most High. And if you disrespect his chosen system administrators, he will delete you from the earth with absolute, terrifying violence. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 41. And he that hath his hair fallen off from the part of his head toward his face, he is forehead bald, yet is he clean. The master engineer expands the protocol to forehead baldness, the loss of hair from the front of the head. The verdict remains the same, yet is he clean. In the Paleo-Hebrew, the word for forehead bald is gibeak, spelled gimel, bet, ket. Gimel is the foot of camel, representing lifting up or walking. Bet is the house. Ket is the wall. Gibeat literally means the house wall is lifted up. The front wall of the biological temple is exposed, but as long as the tissue is healthy, the system is clean. This is a critical lesson in structural geometry. The forehead is the location of the frontal lobe, the seat of decision-making, identity, and worship. It is where the spiritual seal of Yah is placed. In the book of Revelation, chapter 7, we read about the 144,000, 12 times 12 times 1,000, representing perfect governmental order multiplied by divine fullness, who are sealed in their foreheads. This is not a physical tattoo or a microchip. That is the garbage, paranoid doctrine of these Sunday school preachers. The seal in the forehead is a spiritual frequency. It is the pure, uncorrupted code of the Torah, written directly into the frontal lobe of the brain. Even if the physical hair is gone, if the forehead is bare, as long as that frontal lobe is running the Creator's software, the system is clean and secure. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 42. And if there be in the bald head or bald forehead a white reddish sore, it is a leprosy sprung up in his bald head or his bald forehead. But look at the extreme danger of an exposed motherboard. If a white reddish sore appears in the bald head or bald forehead, the status changes instantly. The bare circuitry has been compromised. It is a leprosy sprung up in his bald head or his bald forehead. The color signature here is highly alarming, white reddish. This is the same high-frequency thermal signature of active, weeping inflammation we saw in the boil and the burned. In the Paleo-Hebrew, the word for sore is nega, spelled Nun, Gimel, Ayin. Nun is the seed, Gimel is the foot, Ayin is the eye. Nega literally means the seed's walk revealed to the eye. In the bald head, this sore is a highly visible, active corruption of the core processor. This is the biological equivalent of a short circuit on a bare motherboard. Because there is no hair wall to protect the silicon, a foreign contaminant, a drop of water, a speck of dust, a malicious probe, has landed directly on the copper traces and caused a catastrophic electrical arc. The processor is actively melting. This is the spiritual state of our people, who have been stripped of their culture, their language, and their history, leaving them completely bald and exposed. Because they have no protective wall of Torah, the enemy has been able to inject his corrupting, white reddish swords of lies directly into their foreheads. They have accepted the white man's Christianity, the fake Arabs' Islam, and the conscious community's Egyptian mysticism. Their frontal lobes have been completely short-circuited by these false doctrines. They are running corrupted, parasitic code, and their minds are actively decomposing under the weight of their delusion. Verses 43 through 48, the utterly unclean and the quarantine of the garment. Now we look at the final, absolute verdict for the compromised core processor in the transition of the diagnostic protocol to the host external environment, the garment. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 43. Then the priest shall look upon it, and behold, if the rising of the sore be white reddish in his bald head or in his bald forehead, as the leprosy appeareth in the skin of the flesh, the priest runs the final, deep-level scan on the exposed motherboard. He looks at the rising of the sore in the bald head or bald forehead. It is white reddish, appearing exactly like the active, flesh-eating leprosy of the general skin. This is the complete, systemic compromise of the command and control center. The infection is not just a surface blemish. It has accessed the root directory of the brain. The frontal lobe is no longer executing the Creator's code. It is actively replicating the virus. This aligns perfectly with what we read in the Testament of Solomon and other sealed testaments, where the patriarchs warn about the progressive decay of the mind when it rejects the light of Yah. When a man allows the sore of rebellion to fester in his head, his capacity for rational thought is destroyed. His conscience is seared with a hot iron. He loses the ability to distinguish between clean and unclean, between truth and lies, between life and death. He becomes a spiritual zombie, a walking corpse, carrying a highly contagious bioelectric virus that will infect anyone who comes near. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 44. He is a leprous man. He is unclean. The priest shall pronounce him utterly unclean. His plague is in his head. The verdict is final, absolute, and terrifying. He is a leprous man. He is unclean. The priest shall pronounce him utterly unclean. His plague is in his head. There is no second quarantine, no sandboxing, and no trial period for this individual. The core processor is compromised beyond repair. He is utterly unclean. In the Paleo-Hebrew, the phrase for utterly unclean is Tameh Yatameh, spelled Tet Mem Aleph, followed by Yud Tet Mem Aleph. Let us break down this double witness of chaos. Tet is the basket or container. Mem is the water of chaos. Aleph is the ox head of strength. Yud is the active hand. So Tameh Yatameh literally means the container of chaos dominating the strength is actively secured by the hand of destruction. The double repetition of the word confirms that the corruption has reached a level of absolute, permanent system failure. This is the exact same judgment that Yah will execute on the wicked of our people who refuse to wake up and repent. In the book of Ezekiel, chapter 9, the prophet sees the angels of slaughter, who are direct extensions of Yah's consuming power, going through Jerusalem with their slaughter weapons in their hands. The command is absolute. Slay utterly, old and young, both maids and little children and women, but come not near any man upon whom is the mark, and begin at my sanctuary. They began at the sanctuary with the elders who had the plague in their heads, who were burning incense to pagan beasts in the dark chambers of their minds. The angels did not do this politely. They smashed their skulls, spilling their brains onto the temple floor, and piled their dead bodies in the courts until the house of Yah was filled with the stench of rotting, putrefying flesh. That is the same level of absolute, merciless destruction that awaits every single Israelite who keeps the plague of false religion in their head. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 45. And the leper in whom the plague is, his clothes shall be rent, and his head bare, and he shall put a covering upon his upper lip, and shall cry, unclean, unclean. Look at the extreme, humiliating quarantine protocol for the utterly unclean leper. He must rend his clothes, keep his head bare, put a covering upon his upper lip, and cry out, unclean, unclean, wherever he goes. This is pure bioelectric containment. By rending his clothes, he is displaying his broken, ruined state. By keeping his head bare, his compromised motherboard is exposed for all to see. And while the covering upon his upper lip, this is highly advanced biological engineering. The mouth is the primary exhaust port of the human machine. When we speak, we are not just making noise. We are releasing moisture, breath, and bioelectric frequencies. If a man has leprosy in his head, his breath is loaded with the pathogen. The covering on the upper lip is a physical mask, a biological filter designed to contain the aerosolized viral load. It is a crude, ancient version of a biohazard mask. And why must he cry, unclean, unclean? This is a network broadcast warning. He is a walking security alert. He is transmitting a high volume, audible signal to warn the rest of the network to stay away from his infected node. He is a biohazard, and if any clean Israelite gets too close, they risk getting their own firewall breached by his corrupted frequency. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 46. All the days wherein the plague shall be in him, he shall be defiled. He is unclean. He shall dwell alone. Without the camp shall his habitation be. The quarantine is permanent as long as the infection remains active. He shall dwell alone. Without the camp shall his habitation be. He is completely cut off from the covenant assembly, cut off from the tabernacle, and cast out into the wilderness to rot in isolation. In the Paleo-Hebrew, the word for alone is badad, spelled Bet Dalet Dalet. Bet is the house, Dalet is the door, representing pathway or movement. So badad literally means the house of doors closing. He is locked in a prison of his own making, with every door shut. This is a terrifying picture of spiritual exile. This is what happened to our nation when we were cast out of our land and scattered across the four corners of this flat earth. We became a nation of lepers, dwelling alone without the camp. We were stripped of our names, our language, and our heritage, and we were forced to live in the ghettos, the favelas, and the slave quarters of the heathen nations. We were cut off from the power grid of the Most High. We became a walking warning sign to the rest of the universe of what happens when the chosen seed violates the biological and spiritual laws of the Creator. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 47. The garment also that the plague of leprosy is in, whether it be a woolen garment or a linen garment. Now the master engineer moves to diagnostic focus from the biological host to the host's immediate physical environment, the garment. In the Paleo-Hebrew, the word for garment is beged, spelled bet, gimel, dalet. Bet is the house or container. Gimel is the foot or camel, representing walking or gathering. Dalet is the door. Beged literally means the container that walks through the door. Your clothes are a mobile containment system, a secondary firewall that protects your biological temple from environmental exposure. The text specifies two primary materials, wool and linen. These are not random fabrics. They are highly engineered, natural fibers with specific electrical properties. Wool is a high-resistance, protein-based insulator that holds a static charge. Linen, made from the flax plant, is a high-conductivity, cellulose-based conductor that dissipates static electricity and allows the skin to breathe. In the original design of the priestly garments, Yah strictly forbade the mixing of wool and linen in a single garment. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 19. Why? Because mixing a conductor and an insulator in a single weave creates an unstable electrical field, short-circuiting the body's natural bioelectric frequency. The master engineer is showing us that even our clothes are part of our biological security system. And if the garments themselves become infected with the plague, they must be subjected to the same rigorous diagnostic scan as the flesh. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 48. Whether it be in the warp or woof, of linen or of woolen, whether in a skin or in anything made of skin. Look at the structural depth of the garment scan. The priest must look in the warp or woof of linen or of woolen, whether in a skin or in anything made of skin. In textile engineering, the warp represents the longitudinal threads held stationary in the loom, while the woof or weft represents the transverse threads that are woven through the warp. Together, they form a two-dimensional grid, a coordinate system of fabric. The master engineer is showing us that the plague can infect the very structure of the weave. It can hide in the vertical lines, the warp, or the horizontal lines, the woof. It can infect the natural plant fibers, linen, the animal fibers, wool, or the organic leather, skin. It's just the biological equivalent of a virus that has infected not just the executable files of a software program, but the very code libraries and framework dependencies upon which the software is built. The corruption is woven into the fabric of the system. This has massive prophetic implications for Israel today, family. The garment represents our families, our households, and our communities. The warp represents our fathers, the vertical patrilineal line that carries the seed and the authority. The woof represents our mothers, the horizontal nurturing line that weaves the family together. The enemy has injected his spiritual leprosy into both the warp and the woof of our households. Our fathers have been castrated, locked up in prisons, or turned into weak, passive cowards who refuse to lead. Our mothers have been infected with the Jezebel spirit of modern feminism, teaching them to rebel against their husbands and chase careers over their families. The entire fabric of the Israelite home has been compromised by this systemic rot, and until we bring our households back to the priest, the law, to be scanned and cleansed. Our families will continue to tear apart at the seams. We are going to pause right here at the end of verse 48. We have analyzed the mechanics of the bare motherboard, the humiliating quarantine of the utterly unclean leper, and the initial structural diagnostics of the garment. But what happens when the priest runs the full 7-day quarantine on an infected garment? How does he identify a fretting leprosy in the warp or the woof? And what is the engineering reason behind burning the infected fabric in the fire? In part 5, we are going to dive directly into verse 49 and complete this massive investigation. We are going to look at the final cleansing fire of the master engineer and how we can completely purge the rot from our garments, our bodies, and our minds. Keep your notebooks open, keep your fire burning, and remember, Yah first, always. Part 5, the incineration of the corrupted thread. We left off right at the edge of the loom, tracing how the master engineer diagnoses a system breach that has penetrated the very warp and woof of our physical garments and biological containers. Now, we must examine the final, absolute protocols for the quarantine, washing, and total incineration of the corrupted thread. Verses 49 to 52. The greenish, reddish signal, and the first fire. Let us dive straight into the diagnostic protocols for the infected garment to see how the master engineer reads the structural integrity of the materials surrounding our biological temples. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 49. And if the plague be greenish or reddish in the garment, or in the skin, either in the warp or in the woof, or in anything of skin, it is a plague of leprosy, and shall be showed unto the priest. Look at the specific color signature the master engineer establishes for this environmental breach. Greenish or reddish. This is not a normal stain. It is a high contrast bioelectric warning signal. In the Paleo Hebrew, the word for greenish is yarak, spelled Yud, Resh, Kuf, Resh, Kuf. Yud is the hand or deed. Resh is the head or source. Kuf is the horizon or sun cycle. So yarak literally means the hand of the source repeating the cycle. It represents a deep, repeating organic decay, like mold or mildew eating away at a circuit board. The word for reddish is the dam, spelled Aleph, Dalet, Mem, Dalet, Mem. Aleph is the ox head of strength. Dalet is the door. Mem is the water of chaos or blood. A dam literally means the strength of the door of chaos repeating. It is the color of raw, active, bleeding corruption. When this greenish or reddish signal appears in the warp or the woof, it means the material has been compromised at a structural level. The garment is no longer acting as a secure secondary firewall. It has become a transmitter for the virus. This is the biological equivalent of a shielding sleeve on a high voltage cable rotting away, exposing the bare copper to moisture and causing a short circuit. The master engineer commands that this be showed to the priest, the system analyst, because you cannot have a compromised shielding layer running wild in the camp. This aligns perfectly with what we read in Sefer Yetzirah, where the Creator uses the 22 Paleo Hebrew letters to establish the boundary lines of all physical matter. The letters are the instruction set architecture that holds the atoms of the wool, the linen, and the leather together. When the greenish or reddish plague appears, it means the original code of the material has been corrupted by an invading parasitic frequency. If you ignore this warning signal, the corruption will jump from the garment directly onto your skin, breaching your primary biological firewall and eating its way into your core processor. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 50. And the priest shall look upon the plague and shut up it that hath the plague 7 days. The priest executes the standard sandboxing protocol, Shut up, it that hath the plague 7 days. The infected garment is isolated from the rest of the network. Why 7 days? Because 7 is the number of divine completion and systemic cycles. The Sabbath, Saturday sunrise to sunset, is the weekly reboot and maintenance cycle for the entire creation. By isolating the garment for 7 days, the priest is allowing the material to go through one full operational cycle under observation. It is a scheduled diagnostic period to see if the corruption is static or if it is actively replicating. This is the biological equivalent of putting a suspicious file into a secure sandbox directory and cutting off all network access. You do not let the file run on the main server. You isolate it to see if it attempts to execute malicious commands or modify the registry. Our people today want to ignore these quarantine protocols. They want to keep wearing the dirty, infected garments of the heathen, their pagan traditions, their Christmas trees, their Easter hams, and their lawless, capitalist philosophies, and they expect Yah to bless their households. That is absolute bullshit. The law says if the garment is suspicious, you shut it up. You isolate it from your life. You do not touch it, you do not look at it, and you do not let your children near it until the diagnostic cycle is complete. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 51. And he shall look on the plague on the 7th day. If the plague be spread in the garment, either in the warp or in the woof, or in the skin, or in any work that is made of skin, the plague is a fretting leprosy. It is unclean. On the 7th day, the priest runs another scan. If the greenish or reddish signal has spread, the verdict is final. The plague is a fretting leprosy. It is unclean. In the Paleo Hebrew, the word for fretting is mameret, spelled mem, resh, mem, ta. Mem is the water of chaos. Resh is the head or source. Ta is the mark or covenant. Mameret literally means the chaos from the source repeating the mark of the covenant. It is an aggressive, eating, malignant decay that actively destroys the fibers of the material. The word for unclean is tain, spelled tet, mem, aleph. Ket is the basket or container. Mem is the water of chaos. Aleph is the ox head of strength. Tame literally means the container of chaos dominating the strength. The garment has become a container of chaos. This is the biological equivalent of a mutating worm that is actively rewriting the system files of your operating system. It is not a static glitch. It is a dynamic, aggressive threat. The fibers of the wool or linen are being physically decomposed by the pathogen. This is the exact same judgment we see executed throughout history when our people allowed the fretting leprosy or false doctrines to spread in their households. When our fathers and mothers allowed the Gnostic, Trinitarian lies of the Roman Catholic Church to infect the warp and the woof of our families, the entire structure of our nation collapsed. We became spiritually decomposed. In the book of Jeremiah, the prophet laments that our garments are filthy and our skirts are defiled because we have allowed the pagan frequencies of the heathen to dominate our strength. We became a nation of spiritual lepers, and the Most High cast us out of our land, out of our camp, and scattered us across the four corners of this flat earth to be ground into the dust by our enemies. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 52. He shall therefore burn that garment, whether warp or woof, in woolen or in linen, or anything of skin, wherein the plague is, for it is a fretting leprosy. It shall be burnt in the fire. The master engineer commands the ultimate containment protocol. He shall therefore burn that garment. It shall be burnt in the fire. There is no repair script for a fretting leprosy. There is no patch, no software update, and no compromise. The material must be completely incinerated. This is the physics of thermal destruction. Fire is a high-frequency, high-temperature plasma that breaks the chemical bonds of the corrupted material, reducing the physical structure to ash and releasing the trapped energy. It is the ultimate delete key. This aligns perfectly with what we read in the book of Malachi, chapter 4, verse 1, where the prophet records that the day cometh that shall burn as an oven, and all the proud, yea, and all that do wickedly, shall be stubble, and the day that cometh shall burn them up. Yah is not a gentle, passive God who tolerates fretting leprosy. He is a consuming fire. When the firstborn of Egypt died, the wailing in the dark was so loud it shook the pillars of the earth. Every household with a dead child, mothers screaming over the cold, stiff bodies of their babies. When Sodom burned, the sulfur did not fall like a gentle rain. It fell like burning napalm, melting the skin off those sodomite bastards while they ran blind, their eyes boiling in their sockets. That is the same level of absolute, terrifying destruction that awaits anyone who keeps the fretting leprosy of sin in their garments. If the fabric of your life is corrupted, Yah will not patch it. He will burn it to ash, and the smoke of your torment will rise forever. Verses 53 through 56. The washing protocol in the deep rend. Now the master engineer looks at the alternative scenario. What if the plague has not spread after the first quarantine cycle? Leviticus chapter 13, verse 53. And if the priest shall look, and behold, the plague be not spread in the garment, either in the warp, or in the woof, or in anything of skin. If the spot is static, the system has not yet suffered a complete structural failure. The infection is localized. This is the mercy of the law. Even when there is a high probability of corruption, the master engineer does not execute final judgment without verification. He gives the system a chance to self-correct. He isolates the anomaly to see if the material can hold its integrity under pressure. In our daily lives, when we see a brother or sister starting to slip back into their old worldly habits, we do not immediately cast them out and treat them like heathen. We sandbox them. We pull them aside. We isolate them from the general assembly for a period of time, and we watch their behavior. We give them space to see if they will align themselves back with the Torah, or if the worldly rot will continue to spread in their minds. We do not guess. We let the fruits of their actions reveal the true state of their system. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 54. Then the priest shall command that they wash the thing wherein the plague is, and he shall shut it up 7 days more. The priest commands a dual-layered purification protocol. Wash the thing wherein the plague is, and he shall shut it up 7 days more. This is a double validation protocol. In engineering, you never rely on a single data point. You need to verify the stability of the system over multiple cycles. 14 days total. Why? Because 14 is 2 times 7, the double witness of completion. The washing of the garment is the physical removal of surface contaminants. In modern terms, this is clearing the cache and deleting the temporary files. You do not just run a diagnostic. You have to clean the external environment to prevent reinfection. The second 7-day quarantine is the sandboxing of the wash system to see if the internal fibers will release the deep-seated stain, or if the corruption will continue to write its code to the surface. This completely destroys the garbage doctrine of free will that these lying-ass preachers love to push. The individual has no choice in this matter. The garment must be washed, and it must be shut up. Your personal feelings do not mean a damn thing when the security of the entire nation is at stake. If you try to run corrupted code in a clean system, you will crash the entire network. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 55. And the priest shall look on the plague, after that it is washed. And behold, if the plague have not changed its color, and the plague be not spread, it is unclean. Thou shalt burn it in the fire. It is fret inward, whether it be bare within or without. Look at this highly advanced technical diagnostic. Even if the plague has not spread, if it has not changed its color after being washed, it is still unclean. It is fret inward, whether it be bare within or without. The priest must burn it in the fire. This is a deep structural penetration. The phrase fret inward means the corruption has bypassed the surface fibers and is now eating into the core of the thread. In the Paleo-Hebrew, the phrase for fret inward is pekadet, spelled P, ket, dalet, ta. P is the mouth or blow. Ket is the wall. Dalet is the door. Ta is the mark. Pekadet literally means the breath that breaks the wall of the door to mark. The infection has broken through the outer physical barrier of the fiber and is now occupying the internal registry files of the material. This is the biological equivalent of a rootkit that has successfully hidden itself in the system's firmware. You can wash the hard drive, you can delete the temporary files, but the moment you reboot the machine, the malicious code executes again because it is written directly into the silicon. It is bare within or without. This is what happens when you do not fully repent of your past sins. You think you washed the garment. You think you stopped the act of rebellion. But because you did not completely purge the root cause, because you kept the same heathen friends, kept watching the same filthy entertainment, and kept harboring the same bitter, covenant-hating attitude, the leprosy breaks out right inside the fibers of your mind. It is a deeper, more vicious corruption than the first one. It is a systemic relapse, and the only righteous action the master engineer can take is to hit the delete key and burn your entire existence in the fire of his wrath. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 56. And if the priest look, and, behold, the plague be somewhat dark after the washing of it, then he shall rend it out of the garment, or out of the skin, or out of the warp, or out of the woof. But what if the washing has successfully weakened the infection? If the plague is somewhat dark after the washing of it, meaning the bright, high-frequency greenish or reddish signal is losing its intensity, fading back into the natural color of the fabric, the priest does not burn the whole garment. He commands a surgical intervention. Then he shall rend it out of the garment, or out of the warp, or out of the woof. This is the physical removal of the corrupted sector. In the Paleo-Hebrew, the word for rend is kara, spelled kuf, resh, aleph. Kuf is the horizon, or gathering. Resh is the head, or source. Aleph is the ox head of strength. Kara literally means gathering the source of strength to tear. You have to violently tear the infected fibers out of the loom. This is the biological equivalent of a surgical excision. If a surgeon finds a localized tumor that has not yet metastasized, they do not kill the patient. They cut the tumor out along with a margin of healthy tissue to ensure the cancer cannot spread. This is what we must do with our lives when we begin to wake up to this truth. We have to violently rend the corrupted threads out of our households. If you have a friend who is running corrupted code, who is constantly trying to drag you back into the Christian church, back into the club, back into the world, you have to cut them off. If you have a family member who mocks the Sabbath, who laughs at the laws of the Most High, you have to create a spiritual air gap between yourself and their infection. If you do not cut them out of your garment, their yellow-haired doctrines will jump across the gap and reinfect your core processor. You must rend it out. Verses 57 through 59, the final scan in the law of the plague. Now we look at the final validation protocols and the systemic summary of the biological security manual. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 57. And if it appear still in the garment, either in the warp or in the woof, or in anything of skin, it is a spreading plague. Thou shalt burn that wherein the plague is with fire. If, after the surgical excision, the greenish or reddish signal appears still in the remaining fabric, the intervention has failed. The corruption has already written its code to other sectors of the garment. It is a spreading plague. Thou shalt burn that wherein the plague is with fire. This is a recurrent exploit loop. It means the virus was not fully contained by the rending, it had already migrated through the fiber pathways into the healthy areas of the weave. This is the tragedy of so many of our people. They are given opportunities to repent, given space to correct their ways, but they choose to let the rot spread. They continue to allow the worldly, fleshly desires of Esau to dominate their minds. They let the spiritual leprosy of the Christian church, the Islamic mosque, and the conscious community eat away at their identity until they are completely unrecognizable. They become walking vectors of spiritual disease, and the only righteous action the assembly can take is to cut them off and cast them out before they infect the entire camp. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 58. And the garment, either warp or woof, or whatsoever thing of skin it be, which thou shalt wash, if the plague be departed from them, then it shall be washed the second time, and shall be clean. But if the diagnostic scan confirms that the plague has departed from them after the washing and isolation, the system has successfully purged the anomaly. But notice the final, double validation protocol. It shall be washed the second time, and shall be clean. Why wash it a second time? This is a double validation protocol. In engineering, you never rely on a single clean scan. You need to verify the stability of the system over multiple cycles. The second washing is the final system restore, ensuring that every trace of the pathogen has been completely deleted from the cache. This is a process of true, deep-level sanctification. You do not just get cleansed once and think you are good for the rest of your life. The enemy is constantly looking for a back door, a vulnerability in your firewall, to inject his corrupting code. You have to wash your clothes a second time. You have to constantly monitor your physical and social environment, keeping your temple clean, eating the plant-based, vegan diet that Yah engineered in Genesis chapter 1, verse 29, and keeping the Saturday Sabbath from sunrise to sunset to maintain your frequency alignment with the Creator. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 59. This is the law of the plague of leprosy in a garment of woolen or linen, either in the warp or woof or anything of skins, to pronounce it clean or to pronounce it unclean. The master engineer closes this highly advanced technical manual with a summary of the protocol. This is the law of the plague of leprosy. To pronounce it clean or to pronounce it unclean. This is a hard binary system. There is no gray area. No, well, let us be nice and inclusive. In the kingdom of Yah, something is either clean or it is unclean. It is either 0 or 1. If you try to run corrupted code in a clean system, you will crash the entire network. This aligns perfectly with what we read in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 30, verse 19, where Yah declares, I call heaven and earth to record this day against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life, that both thou and thy seed may live. This is not a religious invitation. It is an engineering specification. Yah is handing you the access codes to his system. If you execute the code of obedience, you will tap into the power grid of creation and take dominion over this flat earth. If you execute the code of rebellion, you will trigger the self-destruct sequence of his wrath, and he will delete you from the mainframe of reality with absolute, terrifying violence. The altar call of the clean garment. Now, family, we have completed this massive 5-part journey through the biological security protocols of Leviticus chapter 13. We have stripped away the religious garbage and looked at this through the lens of divine engineering, Paleo-Hebrew forensics, and prophetic reality. We have seen how the physical rot of the skin mirrors the spiritual rot of our people today, and how the enemy has reverse engineered these very protocols to keep us locked in a state of perpetual quarantine. So now, I am calling you to an altar of decision. This is not some emotional church-style altar call where you cry a few tears and then go right back to eating your pork chops and breaking the Sabbath. This is a hard, technical reboot of your entire operating system. If you have been sitting in those Sunday morning whorehouses, letting those lying-ass, punk-ass pastors feed you the yellow-haired, Hellenistic lies of Christian theology, you have a dry skull on your head. Your core processor is compromised. You are running corrupted, parasitic code that is actively decomposing your mind. I am commanding you today to shut up your system. Sandbox yourself from the corrupting influence of those false teachers. Shave off all the worldly attachments, all the pagan traditions, and all the theological garbage you learned in Sunday school. Create a spiritual air gap between yourself and your unawakened family members, your old friends, and your former pastors. If you have been filling your biological temple with the rotten, putrefying dead flesh of animals, you are violating the original plant-based vegan blueprint of Genesis chapter 1, verse 29. You are dumping trash into the temple of the Holy Spirit, feeding parasites and causing your physical machine to fail. I am calling you today to wash your clothes, clear your system, return to the plant-based diet that Yah engineered for the Israelite body, and let your physical vessel restore its natural high-capacity frequency. And if you have been breaking the Sabbath, keeping the pagan Roman calendar, and ignoring the weekly maintenance cycle that Yah built into time itself, you are running on an unstable voltage. The Sabbath is Saturday, from sunrise to sunset. It is not Friday evening. It is not Sunday. Saturday sunrise to sunset is the weekly reboot and maintenance cycle for the human machine. I am commanding you today to align your frequency with the Creator's clockwork. Keep the Saturday Sabbath holy, from sunrise to sunset, and let your system receive the pure signal of the Torah. If you reject this warning, if you choose to keep the fretting leprosy of compromise in your warp and your woof, the master engineer will execute the final delete key on your entire existence. He will rain down fire and sulfur, just like he did on Sodom, and your flesh will bubble and melt off your bones while you scream in agony. Do not play games with the Almighty. Bring your system to the priest, the law, to be scanned, cleansed, and validated today. I want to thank every single dedicated Israelite brother and sister who tuned in to this 5-part series on Yah First Ministries. You are the righteous remnant, the two witnesses of Israel and Judah standing on your feet, and the nations are terrified of your resurrection. Share this episode with every sleeping Negro who needs to hear the raw, uncut truth. Let us flood the earth with the frequency of the Torah, using every tool of dominion Yah has placed in our hands. Keep your fire burning, keep your eyes on the blueprint, and remember, Yah first, always. This is Brother Bet Sade Lamed Aleph Lamed, signing off from Yah First Ministries. Peace, blessings, and absolute dominion to the chosen seed of Israel. Shalom.
could